Hi, everyone. My name is Kurt Bachmann, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish, our holiday episode. In today's episode, we're speaking with Josef Bachmann about his journey through apprenticeship as a journeyman and ultimately the achievement of Meister Brief. I'm honored to chat with my father and my hero today. I hope you enjoy what I consider to be a thoughtful memoir of my father's career. Chef Bachmann's story is an honest and revealing portrait of humble beginnings to finding a place of pride, happiness, and hospitality. My father's story is a beautiful one about a child, a baker, and ultimately an entrepreneur, and his travels and experiences across Germany, and his ultimate migration to America, and eventual trek to the mountains of Colorado. From Bavaria to Düsseldorf to Frankfurt and beyond, join me today as I chat with my dad and my mom about the art of baking, the journey of apprenticeship to journeyman to Meister. And there they are. Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hear Mom there next to you. Hi, Mom. You can stick your head in there. Hey. I'm pretty excited to have you on the show today, Dad. Really, really excited. And I promise to keep my emotions in check. You've shared some really, really wonderful stories over the years, and I'm excited to focus our discussion today on your journey through two generations, your grandfather, your father of bakers, and then your travels to America to become an entrepreneur in the hotel business with Mom. So to start it all off, let's go all the way to the back. Hopefully I say it correctly, but I understand you were born in Katzengabel. Am I saying that? Katzengabel. Now that's also the area of Bohemia, all right?
Yeah.
As we would know that as southeast Germany.
Yeah.
When it's part of Germany, small village. So, so tell us about, Grandpa, your grandpa, when he started the bakery, and then we'll kind of walk through that to present day.
Well, all I can tell you about my grandpa, I just remember he was in the First World War, and he came back. He just was, but he started the bakery, and that's what I heard from my grandma. And he had a brother. Well, and he actually was a twin brother, and
Okay.
But to come back to the bakery, I guess my dad took over the bakery, and he was running the bakery until 1944. In April, they called him. He had to go into the war. 44. In October, the last push to Stalingrad, he was killed in Stalingrad. So, but my grandma, my mom, will keep on baking. And in the area where Sudengau, there were a lot of prisons from the Germans, for the Polish, the Hungarian, the Czechs. And when the Americans took over, all those prisons were opened up, and all those people were so hungry, and they all were looking for something to eat, and naturally they went to the bakery. And I think that's the only way we were still alive, because my mom and grandma were able to bake bread for them.
So the bakery was still open after we lost Grandpa. Okay. All right.
And then when the Czechs took over the bakery and told us to get out, and so we were driven out of our house, and we were loaded up, and we ended up in a railroad car for a couple of weeks, and then we ended up in Karlstadt am Main, that's in Unterfranken.
Yeah, so just for our audience then, so now we've moved from the eastern part of Germany, and now you're in Bavaria, like the south of Munich area?
No, it's actually west of Munich.
West of Munich. Okay. And so a family took you in, a farmer took, and
they were forced to take us in. every town in Bavaria had to take so many of those people what were driven out.
And so who was with your family at this time then? Who was still there?
My oldest brother, he was 3 years older than I am, and my two sisters. My grandma, she got and my mom, and so we're. But I have to say, those people were very nice. But can I come back to my father's family one more time?
Yeah.
My father had a great family. He had two brothers and two sisters, and I'm still in contact with all the nieces from those guys.
Wow.
And I'm so glad that we are still in contact and we're still telling stories about it. Okay, to go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, Dad. So tell us about life on the farm. So you're what, 9 years old?
Yeah, I was 9 years old, and actually that's another story. That the son of the farmer what took us in, he was a prisoner in New York by the Americans, and he came home at that time while we were living there. And the first thing he said to my brother and to me, come on the wagon. And he would take the two horses and we would go out on the farm. He wanted to see his farm when he came back home.
Did you enjoy that time on the farm? Was the farmer?
I was a boy, and then I loved the outside, and I loved the farms and things, and I always had something to eat because they treated us nice. And
so did Grandma continue to encourage you? So now the bakery's closed. You've left the bakery. You're on the farm, but is Grandma still encouraging you to learn the trade?
Yes. Well, actually, was my mom. She said I have to learn the baker's trade in case we're coming back home again. You have to run the bakery.
Yeah. So then, how long were you before you went to Würzburg and you were on the farm? How old were you when you then decided to go to Würzburg?
I was 14 years old. And the farmer I worked for last, he had relatives in Würzburg what had a bakery. And they were looking for cheap labor. And so they was telling me about me. And so I was introduced to those people in Würzburg, and they said I can go into apprenticeship.
And so so now it's 1950, right? You've told me that your apprenticeship actually started on August 1st, 1950.
Yeah, and I did 3 years, and there was some learning. I knew all the things, how to roll a roll and bread and Blonderdijk and Blätterdijk, and I knew all that stuff, but I didn't learn much of the fine bakery.
So you stayed at one place in Würzburg for your entire apprenticeship?
Yeah. I actually stayed an extra year. I stayed 4 years there.
And what was the name of that facility, that bakery?
Bäckerei Paulus. Paulus.
And then that's very formal. And so then where did you go after? Did you go to Stuttgart after Würzburg then?
Well, that the way it came, I went to the barber and I was reading the paper, and there was an ad in there that they were looking for bakers at $65 a week, 65 marks.
Yeah.
At that time in Würzburg, I made 35. So I almost doubled that. So I went home and told my boss, and I said, I have to look out for myself. So he said, it's time for you to leave and start wandering. So I went to Stuttgart and I got the job. And I worked there for a year. And that bakery was actually like a factory. With big ovens and things. That's enormous what they did at that time already. But Stuttgart is such a beautiful city. I remember that Stuttgarter Kickers, Stuttgart, beautiful. I have such nice memory from Stuttgart.
And
then
then
from there, we were unloading flour, 200-pound bag of flours, and I got a hernia. So I had an operation. And so after the operation, I went home, stayed home for a couple of weeks, and then I went to Frankfurt. In Frankfurt, I got a job. It's actually a small town outside of Frankfurt, Groß-Gerau. And I worked there for a year. And it was all right, but I didn't learn much there. I did just the regular stuff, what everybody else does.
when did Garmisch, when it was Garmisch after Frankfurt?
Went on the train and went down to Munich. And first I went to Mittenwald. It's a small town in the mountains. And I left the mountains. And I worked there for 4 weeks, but he didn't give us much to eat. So I left there and I went to Garmisch.
And so people know Garmisch is a very big ski resort in Bavaria.
Garmisch-Partenkirchen, where the Olympics were in 36.
Yeah. And what were what are some of the mountains that you've told me about that are in that area?
The boys what I worked with at the bakery in Garmisch, they were mountain climbers, and we went up the Zugspitze, the Alpspitze, Dreitorspitze, and we went to the Königssee and went up on the wall. So you have to go with the boat up to the mountains and get out of the boat to climb up the mountains.
I just love it. I've seen those pictures, and so after that season, I'll call it. Is that when you then took the motorcycle to Hamburg?
Yeah, my buddy of mine, we worked together there. He had a motorcycle. It was a DKW 125.
for both of you on it? Both of you are on that one?
Both of us on. And we went to the Lüneburger Heide, where his parents lived. And they were so nice and took us in. And then from there, we went to Hamburg. He had a job already in Hamburg, and I was looking for one, and was nothing open. So put my name down to go on the ship as a baker, but my ship didn't come in. So I called my friend in Stuttgart, in Düsseldorf. He was working in Düsseldorf. He was my school friend from grade school.
Is that Herman? Yeah.
Herman,
okay. Yeah.
And he was in a thing going to America. And he said, "Come and take my job here in Düsseldorf." So I went on the train, went to Düsseldorf, and worked for a couple of weeks in a small bakery. And then I worked for them. And those people were so good. But the story is...
Well, let me give you a really easy question first. You better get it right. Who was the most important person that you met in Düsseldorf?
Well, that
story... say the right thing
you better say Mom.
that story is coming now.
Okay.
That story is coming now.
All right.
Go
ahead.
So I worked there for 2 years, and I made good money there, and I had a chance to make my Meisterbrief, and I made it. And the buddy I worked with to study for the Meisterbrief, he worked in a bakery where my future wife, was working. So I was studying with him, and that's where I met, in that bakery. And the first thing I said to her, if I would have some money, we could go to the movie. And she said, "I borrow you 5 marks." So we went.
Was that Bamer? Was that Bamer's, or was that a different bakery? That's not.
What's the name of your bakery?
I don't remember. Scharrenberg.
Scharrenberg.
Okay. And so mom worked out front and then you worked in the back and she lent you money. She still lends you money. And so I want to come back before we get too far away from Meister Brief for our students and other listeners, as I understand it, and I've read it over the years. And it's a funny story because you never told any of us that you had made your Meister Brief when you were moving, when we were in Colorado, fast forward. I found the Meister Brief in the closet. But tell us about what's involved with earning a Meister Brief.
The reason you make a Meisterbrief, my actually thing was I go to America and work for 10 years, save some money and come back and open up a bakery in Germany. And but the way it worked out in Germany, you have to have a Meisterbrief in order to open up a bakery and in order to have apprenticed, to teach apprentice at the new trade. So that was my reason to make the Meisterbrief. And I had a good chance because I lived in a Catholic YMCA and they had all these different programs for all the different trades.
Yeah.
And I had a good chance to do it there. And I met a lot of good people and
so when you have to study for this exam.
I had to study everything going back from flour, sugar, everything, how it is compound, how it is to put together, what it does when it gets in the dough and what it does, when it is in the dough and when it, all that stuff. Those were all the questions that could come to you when you were questioning it.
And what I thought was fascinating. So when you're ready for the exam, you have as many as 6 Obermeisters who have to test you on everything.
Yeah, we each of us had to go in singly, and there were 6 Obermeisters sitting there, and each of them had 2 questions for each of the guys what took the
candidates. Yeah.
And I guess they actually said to me, "We wish you luck to go to America." So
they were supportive of your.
Yeah, well, we're very supportive. And when I did that, the schriftliche, when I had to do the
written exam,
the written exam, you had to do all the calculation what you have to do in the bakery
to make money,
and things like that. Everything came out to a penny, and I remember so good. And that was a relief. But at that time, my wife and I got to know closer each other, and she actually gave me one of the Traubenzucker. So I had energy to go in there.
Sugar. You gave them sugar.
Glucose tablets.
Glucose, yeah.
So so when you then, and we'll go back and forth a little bit. So you complete the exam. However, you were too young to receive the certificate. You have to be 26 years old to actually receive it, right?
Yeah.
And by then you were in America. And when you turned 26, they actually sent you the certificate from Germany.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Can you go back and talk just a little bit about Herman a little bit, how much he helped you in your career?
Herman was my buddy from grade school. He actually was the first kid to talk to me when we were coming from Sudengau into that town. He was born in that town where we went to, and he started talking to me, and I became an older boy, and then they included me in all the things different in the soccer team and all that stuff. And it was a good town. It was a little town of 650 people. Everybody know each other. I could walk in any of the farmhouses and sit down on the table for dinner because they all knew me. When they needed somebody, they asked if I can help, and then I was always helping. and I just loved the years we were there. So, but we have forgot one important thing. When my wife said, "I give you $5, we can go to the movie," and I said, "Before we go any further here, I gonna go to America. I gotta have a visa to go to America." And she said, "I go with you."
You must have been pretty impressive back then.
That put
Or you needed that $5, right?
I never got my $5 back.
Yeah. No, I think you have. So let's talk about coming to America and the things that you were worried about. I mean, you had to go to mom's parents' house, and because you didn't bring mom right away, right? You went first by yourself.
We went to Sauerland, and I met my mom's parents, and they pretty northern German. They're pretty cool,
Yeah.
They don't do no hugging or kissing and things like that. So when I seen my mother-in-law the first time, I just put my arms around it, and she didn't know what happened to her.
So mom's what, 18 at this time, and you're 24, and then you're getting ready to come to America.
Well, they had to actually give him
Permission.
that she was able to go.
So when you got to America, you've told me the story that you arrived in America in Chicago and on a Friday night at 7:00, and by Sunday midnight you were working Bernie Brothers.
Not Bernie Brothers. I was working at Lincoln Bakery on Lincoln Avenue.
Dinkles.
Yeah. Dinkels opened in 1922. Classic German bakery in Chicago.
So from there I went to Bernie Brothers, and I met a lot of the Germans that worked there. They were not bakers. They just worked on a machine and things like that. And I worked. I got to know Joe Salwitzka. I got to know Horst and Edith, and then when my wife came over a year later, to go back first, to working in the bakery, I didn't have no problem. I knew what to do, and I see things that shouldn't happen and things like that. But then a year later, my wife came over, and we moved into a small apartment by a family from Austria in the basement. And then we moved over across the street where all the friends are living. We had an apartment, and our son Kirk, the chef, was born.
Oh, that's me. Yeah. I do want to point out too, you mentioned the Slavitskas, the Munks, but you don't hear these stories for almost over 60 years. The original people that you met, the Freebergs, the Munkses, the Slavitskas, and the Bachmanns, have been together in business and family and in life. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Beautiful story. So talk a little bit about Dinkels, and then you ended up at Lutz's, which is still open today on Montrose in Chicago. And you were there, I think, for 8 years at Lutz's. Classic bakery.
Yeah. Well, there's some stories in between there. I worked there for 4 years, and I got very sick. I had got rheumatic fever, and we decided to go back to Germany. And
that's when I was 1 or 2 years old, right?
Yeah. So we went. We had enough money to fly back to Frankfurt, and rented a Volkswagen, and we went on the Autobahn and stopped and had lunch. And I get out of the Volkswagen, and the rheumatic fever was gone. And that was a miracle by itself, because I was suffering for 6 months in Chicago. I couldn't go to work. So we stayed for 3 months in Germany, and we had enough money to buy a ticket to go on the old Berlin, one of the older ships, crossing the ocean.
11 days.
11 days, everybody got sick. Everybody was walking around with a paper bag. I was playing soccer with the sailors on top.
And
And
so
the hardest thing was when the ship got away from Germany, from Bremen. That was the hardest thing.
to say goodbye to Germany again, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you come right back to Chicago, right? And your friends are still there, right? And did you go back to Lutz's right away? They took you right back in?
I got my job back. We got a new apartment in a two-flat, and we're working. And my wife.
What year
my
is
wife-
this? What year is this now?
It was it in
60.
1964.
So right before Carolyn comes along, right? Yeah.
And we actually were a happy family and things, but there never was enough money. Actually, my wife went to work in the same bakery Pony Brothers, and then I worked. We worked together in the same bakery. But then the opportunity came. There was a job open in a German bakery, the Lutz's pastry shop, and that was the big. So I worked there then another 4 years for Lutz's, and then I started looking if I could open up my own bakery. Since I bought all the material for the bakery there while I was a mixer, I told them, if you hear something of a bakery for sale, let me know. So it came about that Ackermann's bakery was for sale, and I watched the bakery for a couple of weeks, how many customers go in and out. And so I gave Mrs. Ackermann a call, and she said, come and see us. So we talked about it, and it came about. We worked something out. They took us in as partner.
Well, and the best part of that story is, Mr. and Mrs. Ackermann wanted to take you in, and they asked you what you had to offer. And what did you say?
Well, she asked me what I have, how much
Don't touch the
how
computer.
much money I have. I said, I don't have no money. I just have my two hands and what I have between my ears. She said, come and see us. But I have to say, that was a good time. Those years in the bakery on Irving Park under Austin.
Yeah.
Caroline went to school. Kirk went to school, the grade school at St. Alphonsus Catholic School.
No.
Right down the street, right? St. Pascal's, yeah, right down the street. Yeah. So what? Talk about Ackermann's, and then the decision to make yet another big move. So Germany to America. You're happy in America, like you say, but something continued to pull not only you, but the Munkses and the Slavitskas and the Freebergs and your friends. So talk a little bit about moving west.
Okay. First of all, I have to say about the bakery, I had to remodel that whole bakery because it existed since 1936.
Yeah.
And everything was old. The machinery, everything was old. I remodeled that whole bakery, and that was such a joy to do something like that. And it was a joy that you see the people come to buy you what you do, what you're baking.
Yeah.
That neighborhood was all European people from Hungary, Germany, from Russia, and Polish, and they all walked to the bakery for a coffee cake. And the priest in church would say, "Don't hurry. There's enough coffee cakes at the bakery."
Well, and there was no parking, so you had to rely on the community and the neighborhood, right? Yeah.
Well, we were working pretty hard, and I have to give my wife, she was 28 at that time, and I said to her, I bought a bakery, and she said, Are you out of your mind? What?
What do you want to? You have no money.
My
And
two hands.
another nice thing is before we leave Chicago, I love to buy cars and trade in cars. My first car was a 47 Plymouth. Oh, well, how proud I was when we bought a car. And the next morning,
You had 4 flat tires.
we had four.
So let's talk a little bit about what motivated you to take the family all the way west to Colorado.
First of all, the reason was, yes, I have to say, you had problem with your feet and you couldn't stand 10, 12, 16 hours on your feet anymore. So our friend Jim Freeberg and Joe Slavitska, they moved to Colorado. Jim moved to Montrose, Colorado, and Joe moved to Ouray, Colorado, and both bought a motel. And actually, when Jim seen how Joe was running a motel, he said, "That's something for me." And so he was thinking of me. He came back and said, "We're going to find a bakery, a motel, and we'll buy a motel for you, and you run the motel." So that's when he came and said, "I found a motel in Gunnison, Colorado." So we had to fly to Gunnison.
No, you drove.
We drove first.
Yeah, you and I drove, and then Mom and Carolyn came after.
I mean, before that, we looked at it. We visit Joe and Mont.
So talk a little bit about the, well, it's probably a combination of excitement and also fear, right? To go all the way and inherit a big hotel, a restaurant. You know, you'd never been in the restaurant business before.
First of all, you got to have the money to go and buy a motel.
Yeah.
And then a motel is a very seasonal business. So when we bought the motel, everything looked good. But then the Iraq war came up and the gasoline went up to $5-6 an hour. Nobody would go on vacation. Well, I was standing in a restaurant, looked out on Highway 50 and said, "Where are the people?"
And so the beauty of that story that we don't talk about a lot is that, you know, for 20 years, we had the Tomichi village in Gunnison and we learned a lot. Alex and Kirsten were born in Gunnison, and then then you sold that property to another European family, which is.
First, I wanted to say that you came 2-3 times and ran the restaurant for us, put some new ideas in the restaurant. But you always had to go back to see your family in Oregon. And our daughter, Caroline, she was working in San Diego. So, but then they came and helped us in Gunnison, in the motel. But I always ask, is it worth it? Or do you want to go back to Oregon or to San Diego? And they gave me the free thing to sell the motel. So a Polish fair, we advertised that we're going to sell. That was 20 years. And a Polish family, father, mother, and son-in-law, and about 6 people came. And all in leather coats. Looked like the guns, the Chicago Mafia.
You can't say.
They standing. Oh, they know. I told them that. And they were standing in the parking lot, and I said, "They're gonna buy it."
Yeah,
and they did, and they did a great job. And
they ran it for another 20 years. And
but no, they ran it for 10 years, and now they are in Prescott, Arizona.
Oh, that's
and
right. Yeah.
having another motel.
Two.
So then let's talk about that entrepreneurial spirit, which never really goes away. So yeah, Kirk went off and became a culinary educator, and Carolyn was in San Diego, but another opportunity presented itself in another mountain town that was a couple of hours away called Buena Vista, Colorado. And tell us a little bit about what happened there.
Well, I knew that motel was built. We drove by there once, and I actually didn't like the way the
colors.
the stonework and all that stuff. But here come a phone call from that one of the Polish fellows who had bought the motel in Gunnison, and he called me and said, "Joe, can you borrow me $400,000?" I said, "Stanley, if I had $400,000, what do you want to do with it?" He said, "I want to buy a motel." And he said, "There's a motel for sale in Buena Vista." I said, "Well, then, but I don't have the money to give it to you." So, but then a light went off in my head, and I said, "Let's go back to Buena Vista, see if that motel is still for sale."
So we bought it.
So
we
you
bought
bought it.
We came on the last day when it was on the market.
Yeah, and here we are 20 years later. Carolyn raised her entire family there. Yeah.
24 years old, at 24 years ago. My God, where did those years go?
Let me ask you real quick, Dad, and before we get too far away from, the adventures in Germany, and then Lutz's and Ackermann's, and then what would you say you're most proud of?
I still have to say, I'm proud of the motels what we bought, but I was very proud my trade when I had the bakery in Chicago, because I knew I was able to run a bakery, and it was my father's trade and was my grandfather's trade. So I was very proud of that. But I have to be proud of my wife. She helped me so much in everything. And I have to be proud of my son. He really made it in a culinary educational. And the daughter, Caroline, and her husband running the motel in Buena Vista. Because that's another story. She was working, that has to come. She was working.
It's okay, Mom.
She was working in San Diego, and
she worked for Marriott for a decade, so she brought a lot to the business
and then
as well.
She called me and she said,
and so was Brent. Yeah.
"Dad, if you find another motel, we're gonna run it for you." And that's the way it ended up. I bought a motel in Buena Vista, and they came, and I went in retirement. And I was.
Yeah, no, I don't know that you've ever fully retired. What advice, Dad, do you have for young culinarians and people that want to go into this business, whether they want to be a baker or work in the hotel business? What advice would you have?
If you're financially able to start your own business, or if you have a product, that's the only thing what I always was looking for, to take a product on the market.
Yeah.
Like all the things that different. In the bakery in Chicago, I had 134 items in the store. If I just could take one of those items and put them on the market. But since I came from Germany and I didn't have actually the financial support to do something like that, but that is something for young people today with the internet and the way they do that. All you need is a good item what you produce and put it on the market. That can make your life much happier.
Great advice, Dad. Since we're talking about items, This is our holiday issues. So can you talk a little bit about some of your favorite, obviously you still make Stollen every year. You've talked
Yeah,
about some of the cookies from Lutz's and the Baumkuchen. Can you
yeah.
talk about some of your favorites?
Well, my favorite, I still make them. I still have to make one mix. Is the Stollen. It's actually I would say a German fruit bread, but it's not as solid as the American fruit cake. It is a mixture of quite a bit of butter and sugar, and gets mixed, and with eggs and milk and flours. I mean, you make a dough, and then you put the fruit in there, and nuts, and then all different fruit what you think what you can put in there. Most of them are just putting raisin and nut and almonds in there, but it's a delicate dish. And then they have the Spitzkuchen. It's a chocolate peppermint filled with jellies. And then they have the Dominosteine, that's marzipan and peppermint filled, and then glazed with chocolate over. And then Spekulatius, it's an almond dough, and it has to be pressed out on a
Form.
form. It's like a upper roll, and there's the inform pictures in the form, and you go over
Yeah.
the dough. That's the way you cut them out. So
Well,
and
while we're talking about those, and Mom, you can get in here too. We can see your shoulder, but we can't see your beautiful face. So get in the camera. Hi, Mom. So the name of the podcast is The Ultimate Dish. We talked about this a little bit the other day. And if it's a baked good or a pastry or a cake or a tort, in your mind, what is the ultimate dish?
what we served in the restaurant.
Well, just in your mind, I know you love Sachertorte and have eaten the Sachertorte at Hotel Sacher, but you weren't that impressed with it. But Black Forest Torte is one that you've always talked about. But if
And
you had to pick one, what would be the
well, I
ultimate?
was saying the Black Forest cake or the cheese whipped cream cake,
Black Forest cake.
Black Forest cake. It's a chocolate layer and a yellow layer cut in half, and the first filling is you. First of all, you put that Kirschwasser on top on that layer, and you make with chocolate whipped cream.
Buttercream.
Chocolate buttercream. You make 2 rings on top of things, and then you put cherries in between that. Then you put a white layer on there, and you do the same thing and put the chocolate layer on top, and another filling, and that's where you put the cap on there, and you ice it up, and put the chocolate shaving on there, and almonds on the sides, and then you put
Maraschino cherries.
whipped cream rosettes on there, and then maraschino cherries. And
That-
cheese whipped cream cake is very delicate too. It's cheese, whipped cream, and custard mixed, and you have a yellow bottom, and you have a metal form, and you mix the custard, the cheese.
Thank you so much, Mom and Dad. You guys did absolutely great. I love you very much. And when I think about your kids here in America, 6 grandkids, 3 great grandkids, we have a lot to be thankful for.
We started out with 2, now we are 17.
Oh, I love you guys. Thanks so much.
Well,
Love you.
I hope somebody gets some joy out of it.
I think that's going to happen. Happy
Okay.
holidays. I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Love you. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.